Hey Tommy, so here we are, bedtime again, and time for part 2. Okie dokie. Okay. The next morning, Tink found her friends at the Pixie Dust Well. If you could teach me your talents, maybe the Queen would let me go to the mainland, Tink said. No fairy had ever changed his or her talent. Reluctantly, Tink's friend agreed to help. Silvermist was first. The water fairy showed Tink how to place a dewdrop on each spider web. But each time Tink tried, the dewdrop burst. Next, Iridescent demonstrated how to give fireflies their glow. She captured light in a bucket and scattered it. Dozens of fireflies flew through it and lit up. But when Tink tried, the light wouldn't stick to her fingers. She threw the bucket in frustration. The light spilled in every direction. Now she was glowing too. The fireflies swarmed around her. They thought she was the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. Fawn had Tink's animal fairy lesson all planned. We're teaching baby birds how to fly, she announced. Fawn showed Tink what to do. Unfortunately, Tink's bird was terrified. He didn't want to go anywhere. Tink saw a majestic bird flying overhead. Maybe he can help us, she thought. She waved her hand and tried to get the bird's attention. The scout fairies looked to see what was going on. Hawk, hawk, they yelled, sounding their warning horns. Tink spotted a tree with a knothole and rushed straight for it. The hole was already occupied by Vidya. Crack! The hawk broke through the bark with its beak. The two fairies had to get out of there, fast. They jumped down a hole into a long, dark tunnel. When Vidya reached the end of the tunnel, she could see the hawk on a nearby branch. She stopped in the nick of time, but Tink accidentally slammed into her. Vidya went shooting out of the tree. The hawk opened his beak, ready to strike. Fairies pelted him with berries, rocks and twigs. Luckily, the bird flew away. Let me help you, Tink said to Vidya. I'm fine, snapped Vidya. I was only trying to help, Tink explained. She felt awful. A little while later, Tinkerbell sat on the beach. At this rate, I should get to the mainland right about, never. Tink angrily threw a pebble into the bushes and heard a clunk. She went to investigate and found a beautiful porcelain box. When her friends found her, Tinkerbell was busy putting all the gears and screws and springs back inside the box. The final touch was attaching a ballerina to the lid. Tinkerbell gave the dancer a spin and, to her delight, the box played music. Do you even realise what you're doing? Asked Rosetta. Fixing stuff like this, that's what tinkering is. Who cares about going to the mainland anyway? Silvermist added. But Tink still wanted to go. Tink went to see the only fairy she thought might be able to help. But Vidya was not in the mood for visitors, especially Tinkerbell. You're my last hope, pleaded Tink. Rosetta won't even try to teach me to be a garden fairy. That gave Vidya an evil idea. She suggested that Tinkerbell captured the sprinting thistles to prove she would be a good garden fairy. Tink knew that Vidya's plan was her last chance to go to the mainland. She settled to work building a corral. Hiya, go, go! Tinkerbell cried as she rode out of Needlepoint Meadow atop Cheese. She used 2 twigs to herd some thistles into the coral. It's working, Tink cried joyfully. But as soon as she headed back to the meadow, Vidya quietly blew open the coral gate, and the thistles ran away. Soon other thistles popped up to join the ones that had escaped. It was a stampede. The thistles headed straight for Springtime Square, trampling over the carefully organised springtime supplies. Everything was destroyed, and it was all Tinkerbell's fault. There isn't a garden fairy alive who can control those weeds, Rosetta explained. This has all gone too far, declared Silvermist. Just then Queen Clarion appeared. By the second star, all the preparations for spring. I'm sorry, Tinkerbell whispered as she took to the sky. A little while later, Tink went to the pixie dust well. She told Terence she was leaving Pixie Hollow. He kindly gave her a double scoop of the glittering dust. Thanks, Terence, said Tink. Terence was surprised she knew his name. I'm just a dust keeper, he said. Not exactly seen as the most important fairy in Pixie Hollow. You're probably the most important one there is, Tink argued. You should be proud. I am, Terence replied. Tink could tell that Terence knew she wasn't proud of her talent. Tink stopped in to visit the workshop one last time. She did love to tinker, even though her contraptions never worked. Just then she noticed that Cheese was sniffing something. It was the pile of trinkets she'd found on the beach. Lost things, that's it, she cried. She went to her work table and started to tinker. That night, Queen Clarion gathered all the fairies. She explained that spring would not arrive that year, since there wasn't time to replace what had been ruined. Wait, Tinkerbell cried. I know how we can fix everything. She demonstrated her paint sprayer, which she had fixed so that it worked perfectly. Tink had also designed speedy machines to fix the things that thistles had trampled. Vidya was furious. Coral the thistles, she muttered. I should have told you to go after the hawk. Queen Clarion overheard this. She looked sharply at Vidya. I think your fast-flying talent is well suited to chasing down each and every one of the thistles, the Queen said sternly. Vidya flew away. All of a sudden, she had a lot of work to do. The Queen turned to Tinkerbell. Are you sure you can do this? She asked. I'm a tinker, and tinkers fix things, Tink replied confidently. But I can't do it alone. Clank, Bobble, and all the fairies offered to help. Soon the square was filled with piles and piles of useful objects. Tink showed a group of fairies how to assemble a machine to make berry paint. As soon as all the pieces of the machine were put together, the berries were crushed and dozens of buckets were filled to the brim with paint. Next, Tink used a glove and harmonica to make a vacuum. The fairies could use it to collect hundreds of seeds at a time. Everywhere she looked, Tinkerbell could see baskets and buckets of springtime supplies. Her plan was working. All right, Bubba, have a good night's sleep, and I will read you the next bit tomorrow. Night-night.